Hello, friends, and thank you for tuning in to our broadcast today. In a few moments, we're going to take you into a live session where Bishop Wayne was teaching a message designed to feed your faith and to elevate your understanding. We invite you to join in as if you were here in person and to light up the chat box with your comments and confirmations. This hour of power is your time to recharge, to renew, and even to reset your mind for a life of purpose, passion, and power. At the end of this message, we have an important announcement for you. So do stay tuned. But now let's go into the hour of power with Bishop Wayne Malcolm.
So here's what we're going to deal with. I'm going to start with some quotes and concept and context to legacy mapping. We define legacy. Okay, what legacy is. And then we're going to look at generational promises. I want to show how that God is the God who keeps covenant from generation to generation, so that whatever he promises you, he is going to fulfill either in your lifetime or, in the life of your children, your children's children, your great grandchildren. God is going to be faithful to whatever he promises you, because he's the God. He's a generational God. And then we're going to look at who are your children. Okay, so I want to talk about your children, because your children are not just your biological offspring. And then we're going to look at the 200-year plan. I'm going to explain why it's important for you to have a 200-year plan. And then we're going to talk about succession and passing the baton. And then I'm going to conclude with some really key points about defending your domain and some real practicalities around protecting the palace. All right. So if you're excited, you can write "I'm excited" in the chat box, and I'll see that you're writing. I won't see what you said though at this stage. Okay, so let's look now at some quotes, some very powerful quotes, and here goes. We build our legacy piece by piece, and maybe the whole world will remember you, or maybe just a couple of people. But you do what you can to make sure you're still around after you're gone. Wow. So I love that. That's from David Lowery. You do what you can to make sure that you're still around after you're gone. And I guess I will explain this as we move along, but being gone doesn't necessarily mean that you've died or you've transitioned, but one day you're going to exit the company, the organization, so that you can move into other things. And what you don't want is everything to collapse just because you've moved on. Like smart entrepreneurs are everything with the end in view. And this means that they start out with an exit strategy, and they realize that they're going to be tactically involved in the everyday operations of the company for about 5 years, maybe 10, maybe 3 years. And then they are going to move from the tactical and begin operating, strictly in the strategic, so that they are now working on the company and not in the company. And then eventually they're going to practice succession and appoint a CEO and appoint other executives to run the company. And they're going to be playing golf, and they're going to be doing mission trips and feeding the hungry. And they're going to be working with their church and doing stuff, but the company's still going to be going because they had an exit strategy and they had some succession planning in place. So it's very important that we don't just think of succession in terms of dying and going to, and transitioning and things like that, but it's just about how you leave and what you leave and how you can still be present after you leave. So number 2, here's the next quote. If you look to your past or even your present to see why you are here or what your purpose is, you may get stuck in a limited view of yourself. Wow. Instead, look beyond your years here on earth. Reconnect with the divine and bring forth your soul's legacy into the present moment. Oh my word, that is such a powerful quote. That's by Debbie Ford. It's such a powerful quote because here's what she's saying. She's saying, look, if you want to figure out why you're here, you may not find it from the past or from the present, but if you look beyond your years, okay, beyond your years here on earth, you will reconnect with your source, and you are going to bring forth something that is massive, because you're no longer just limited by the here and now. You've just got a bigger, a wider, and more inclusive vision. Number 3, I want to be remembered. I want to have a legacy. Van Gogh only sold one painting before he died, which would mean that he wasn't famous when he was alive. But in 2017, I know who Van Gogh is. Wow. So that's a quote by whoever this is, JID. And I love it because, you know, there are many people whose greatness was not celebrated while they were here. They made an impact on their generation. They made an impact on the world, but it wasn't recognized and it wasn't celebrated by the people around them. However, future generations have said, wow, here was a genius. Here was a master. Here was greatness. And we failed to recognize it. We failed to celebrate it, but we're going to celebrate it now. And this is not just true of Van Gogh, who only sold one painting before he died. It's true of many people, including the freedom fighters and social activists, and you know, the philanthropists and humanitarians, and some of the great artists and entertainers. You know, in their lifetime, their greatness wasn't recognized and celebrated as much as it is now. And their children's children are still reaping the benefits of their legacy. So these are important quotes, and I'm hoping that they give some context to what we're going to deal with tonight. So we're going to look now into definitions. Okay, so we're going to define legacy. All right, because it's a big word, and it's definitely a big word in the Christian dictionary. 2 big words: inheritance and legacy. These are 2 huge words in Christianity. You know, your purpose in life ultimately is to convert your inheritance into a legacy, and I'm going to explain that in just a moment. So, your legacy is the gift you bequeath to future generations. That gift may be financial, but it also includes the example you set, the children you raised, the values you hold, the lessons you learned, and the bridges you built. Your legacy is leverage for future generations. Wow, your legacy is leverage for future generations. It is the gift that you give to future generations. It's financial, yes, in terms of your estate, but it includes the children, the values, the lessons, the bridges. And in this respect, a legacy and an inheritance are exactly the same thing. They are alpha and omegas. They are beginning and ends. They are first and last. They are the diamond in the ring. That, you know, I've been sharing the fact that first and last, to be the first and the last, is only possible in the circle. And so that the purpose of God is to come back to the beginning. And the gospel of the kingdom is that God will get what he wanted in the beginning. And so we see that he sits on the circle of the earth. But when it comes to legacy and inheritance, your parents' legacy is your inheritance, and your legacy is your children's inheritance. So the legacy and the inheritance are the same thing. But whatever you inherit from a previous generation, you know, you must develop so that you can leave it as a legacy or as the inheritance for future generations. And so this is perhaps the ultimate purpose You know, when we start thinking about our purpose, it's easy to think about, okay, well, you know, I have this realm of responsibility and I'm going to develop enterprises and initiatives and I'm going to run them and I'm going to maximize all my potential. I'm going to cultivate all these seeds and I'm going to, and I'm going to, and I'm going to, and I'm going to. But why are you going to? Because ultimately, God doesn't want everything you do to die with you. God doesn't want everything you do to stop when you stop. God doesn't want you to be the only beneficiary of the things that you develop and build. Because if you look at the first commandment, it's be fruitful and multiply. Multiply. So there has to be some sort of multiplication. There has to be some sort of increase, and there have to be other beneficiaries of your dominion and of your domain and of your realm. And someone must inherit your throne. So it's important for us now to begin thinking in terms of this big picture, right? This big picture, which is your legacy. And I'm going to show you now that succession in the Bible is really the generational blessing. Okay, there is a generational blessing in the Bible, and our generation must recover this generational blessing. Like, it's our job to recover and restore the generational blessing. Now, about 20 years ago in the Christian church, in certain facets of the Christian church, there was a wave of teaching about generational curses. And the idea was that you could inherit curses that were on your parents' or grandparents' lives, that you'd be punished for the sins of your parents and of your grandparents. And this became a wave of teaching, and it really took hold in certain quarters. And I don't want to, I guess, address that, but I'm just going to say this, that the main passage they used was based on the Ten Commandments, where God says, you know, he's a jealous God, and he visits the iniquities of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation. And so they quoted that God would visit the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation. But that's not the end of the verse. The verse actually says, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, but for them that love me, showing mercy, kindness, and so the whole point was that, yes, of course, if you keep repeating the sins of your parents, then you're going to inherit their problems. But the truth is that a believer is blessed. A believer is blessed. And, you know, Christ took all the curses upon himself on the cross so that we could have the blessing of Abraham. So we actually are blessed, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God. So I said that to say that the Bible teaches more about the generational blessing than it does any sort of generational curse. And if we need to revive and restore and recover a teaching of the Bible, it is the teaching of the generational blessing. So here goes. The patriarchs of Israel, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, are perhaps the first and most graphic illustration of what a generational blessing looks like. What happens is God blesses Abraham, and God makes promises to Abraham. Abraham becomes very rich. The Bible doesn't say Abraham was rich. It says Abraham was very rich. And it says what he was rich in, silver, gold, and cattle. He was very rich. And we know he also dug wells. So Abraham was blessed with promises and with prosperity. Well, when he died, his son Isaac inherited not only the prosperity of Abraham, but he also inherited the promises that God made to Abraham. So Isaac inherits the blessing. And so, and likewise, he passed, you know, when he died, Jacob inherited the prosperity and the promises of two generations. So The patriarchs kind of understood something that perhaps we're just understanding today. They understood that the promises of God, the plans of God, and the purpose of God is simply too big to squeeze into any one person's lifetime. I'm going to say it again. The patriarchs of Israel understood that the promises, the purposes, and the plans of God were too big to squeeze into any one person's lifetime. So, because they understood that, whenever they were dying, they would call their sons to the bedside. They would lay their hands on their sons, and they would prophesy blessings upon them. And this was a way of passing the baton. They would literally pass the baton, as in a relay race, onto their children. And with the baton was the responsibility of the realm, was all the prosperity in the realm, and all the promises of God that were upon the realm, so that that son started his life on the shoulders of his father's highest achievements. In other words, new generations are not supposed to start where the previous generation started. They're supposed to start on platforms that were built by previous generations. And so Isaac inherited the blessing of Abraham. But he also went on to dig his own wells and accumulate his own wealth, so that what he had was a double portion. He had twice as much as Abraham. And then when Jacob inherited the blessing, he was inheriting 2 generations of blessing. So that with each new generation, the blessing multiplies, it compounds, it increases, it gets bigger, it gets better. That's the original plan of God, that with each new generation, the provisions, the prosperity, the territory, the realm, it increases, it expands, it gets bigger, it gets richer, it gets more influential. And we see this in Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham has Isaac, Isaac has Jacob and Esau, but Jacob has 12 sons. And then from the sons to tribes. So it's increasing with each generation. It's not decreasing. And the generational curse, the real generational curse, is that all your efforts get consumed and lost and scattered, so that no one is able to build on it and take it to another level, so that your name is lost. Your name never becomes great because it's lost, because there's no succession. So the generational blessing is succession. The generational curse is no succession. And if we're going to be worried about a generational curse, we should be worried that everything we build and everything we do just simply disappears and fizzles out, and no one knows and no one remembers. That was never the plan of God. If you look at the patriarchs, it just keeps increasing with each new generation. Now, the same thing happened with the prophets. Elijah, he was a great prophet, but there were 7 major miracles recorded in the life of Elijah. But when Elijah ascended into heaven, when he transitioned to heaven, his mantle fell upon a young prophet, Elisha, who was not his biological son, but he inherited the territory, the realm, the office, the palace, the seat, the throne. He inherited the position of Elijah, and he walked in the double portion. So there are 14 major miracles documented in the life of Elisha. So for Elijah, there were 7 major miracles. For Elisha, there are 14. To be precise, there were 13 major miracles documented in the life of Elisha. However, after he died and was buried, years later, another guy died, and they threw him into the tomb of Elisha. And when his body connected with the bones of Elisha, he came back to life. So there was anointing on Elisha's bones. So what this means is, so that made 14, which made the double portion. And so, we shouldn't be intimidated by new talent, new skill, new energy. We should actually be inspired by it, because that's why we're here. We are here to create platforms that future generations can stand tall on and not have to struggle with the things that we survived. They shouldn't have to struggle with the things that we survived. Now, we likewise see this with the kings, David and Solomon. Yes, Solomon built a temple, but it was the temple that his father David designed. So David designed the temple. David decided to build a temple, but it wouldn't happen in his lifetime. Solomon inherited the throne and decided to fulfill the wishes of his father David, and he built the temple. What about Aaron and his sons? Aaron was the first high priest of Israel. Moses' brother, actually. Aaron was the first high priest. And when he became the high priest, God designed his clothes. Yep, God is a designer. He's a fashion designer, and you can't out-design God. God designed the liturgical, Levitical garments of the high priest of Israel. And was it loud and was it flash? Yes, it was. There was gold in there. There was all kind of precious stones in the breastplate. There was it was an amazing garment. But as part of Aaron's inauguration, he would put on the garment of the high priest, and Moses would pour a horn of oil over his head. And the oil ran down his face and his beard, and the oil stained and saturated his garment. Now, here's the fact of history. When Aaron died, one of his sons became the new high priest. But they didn't make for him a new set of clothes. They took the same garment of Aaron and put it on the son, who the next one, his name was Eleazar. They put it on Eleazar and then poured a fresh vial of oil over his head, so that he would be walking in 2 generations of the anointing. He'd be walking in his father's anointing, and he'd be walking in his own anointing. We see this with the apostles, that Paul calls Timothy his son, but Timothy is not a biological son. He's a ministry son. And because what Paul is saying is, Timothy, what I'm building right now, you're going to inherit it one day, and you'll be tasked with taking it to a new level. You'll be tasked with taking it bigger, wider, broader, etc. So we see this principle of the generational blessing running through the Bible. The patriarchs, the prophets, the kings, the priests, the apostles, they all practiced the generational blessing. Why is that important? It's important because in our day, too many of us have had to start from scratch. Too many of our children are starting from scratch. Too many of us have had to just try to figure it out for ourselves, whereas those who are ahead of us on the social economic scale, the people who are miles ahead of us on the social economic scale, typically inherited wealth and wisdom from a previous generation. They inherited ideas and habits and values and secrets and systems and vehicles and funds. They inherited it, and they are miles ahead because of the generational blessing. Now, we have got to break the curse in our generation and make sure that the generations that come after us, whether they are biological children or spiritual children, which we're going to break down in a minute, that they actually are able to start on the platform of our highest achievements. That's God's design. That's God's plan. And if you think this way, you're going to think bigger than most people around you. And because you're thinking bigger than most people around you, you're going to unleash more levels of greatness, more levels of ingenuity, more levels of creativity, more levels of energy, because your goal is so much bigger. Everyone else has got a goal. Oh, I want to make $1 million in the next couple of years. I want to be a millionaire. That's their goal. But you are thinking about your great grandchildren being millionaires. So now you're thinking much, but you're not thinking about millions now. You need tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions, whatever the case is. Your dream demands that you think much bigger about your domain and about the seeds of prosperity and possibility that are in your domain, so that you're not thinking small, you're thinking big, because you're not just thinking about yourself. So that's why it's important to start thinking big. Right? And thinking beyond yourself and thinking beyond your years, because it's going to unleash the image and likeness of God in you. It's going to unleash fountains of creativity, innovations, productivity, industriousness, ideas that are bigger than what most people are thinking, and therefore more energy, and it's going to be great. So let me go down to the gray boxes, right? And just draw some conclusions from the green boxes. Here's the conclusions. Biblical success involves succession, sustainability, and continuity. That's a biblical success. If you're going to be biblically successful, it will be measured in terms of your succession, your sustainability, and continuity. All right? This is why God made man last in the order of creation. Like, he brought light, divided the light from the darkness, and divided the water from the dry land, and then caused vegetation to appear, and put fish in the sea and fowl in the air and stars in the sky. And he did all of this, and then he made man. Why? Because God's not, if God would have made man on the first day, he'd have been dead by the second day. Right. So the thing is, God was more concerned with the survival of the man than he was the arrival. So because God's priority was the survival of the man and not just the arrival of the man, he would first create an ecosystem and an infrastructure capable of supporting human life. And he would put those systems in place so that when the man came onto the scene, he could survive and thrive in that ecosystem and in that environment. And because God is, biblical success is about succession, sustainability, and continuity. Number two, passing the baton. Life is a relay race. Life is a relay race in which your team members are not beside you. Your true team, your partners are beside you. Your allies, your colleagues are beside you, but your teammates, your team members are before you and behind you. In a relay race, your team members are before you and they are behind you. Behind you are going to hand you something. Before you are expecting something from you. And those are your teammates, and life is like that. You got to take something from the past and bring it into the future. That's exactly what your window called life is all about. And then number three, increase through inheritance. Each generation should start on the shoulders of a previous generation. Each generation should start on the shoulders of a previous generation. Next, God's plans and promises. God's plans are too big to squeeze into any one person's lifetime. And finally, Proverbs 13:22, one of my favorite passages in the whole Bible. It says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. What? A good man. Do you know what that word good man means? It means that he is righteous, he is honorable, he is noble, he is virtuous. He's a good person. So a good person, so watch this. Just enough is not enough for a good person. Woo! I'm gonna say it again. Just enough is not enough for a good person, because a good person has generational dreams and goals and is thinking about their children's children. A good person leaves an inheritance for his children's children. A good person is not so selfish that they're only concerned about themselves, me, myself, and I. And so long as I've got food and I've got clothes and I've got the house and I've got the ride and I've got the things that I want, then I'm happy. That's not a good person. A good person is actually has generational vision, generational goals, and employs generational strategies. So here goes. We'll go down to the blue boxes. God is faithful. He keeps the agreements he makes with you such that your children inherit those agreements. Wow. Whatever agreements God makes with you, he keeps them such that your children inherit them. For this reason, the patriarchs craved succession. Without succession, there would be no success. Generational vision. The scripture I quoted earlier on. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day. He saw it and was glad. How did Abraham see Jesus? Jesus was born 42 generations after Abraham, but he saw Jesus by faith. And sometimes you got to look into your future by faith and see your children's children and see the organizations, the foundations, the movements, the enterprises that still carry your name off into the future. You got to see it by faith. And when you see it by faith, you start to rejoice and you're glad because you can see by faith that any agreement God's made with you is going to come to pass with you or without you. Woo! That was rich. I'm just going to do this session, Who Are Your Children? And then I'm going to pause so I can hear your feedback. So I've been talking about your children and your children's children and all of that. And I guess most people hearing that think, oh, biological. So let me show you that your children are number one, biological. Your biological children are the legal heirs to your estate. God's plan is that they inherit leverage in the form of finance, assets, platforms, vehicles, and values. Okay, but number two are your spiritual children. Your spiritual children are the souls you win to Christ or that you disciple in kingdom culture. These inherit your values, your example, your wisdom, and convictions as a form of leverage. Your mentees, your professional mentees are your children to whom you gift time, knowledge, skills, values, wisdom, and opportunities. And your projects are your children. Your life projects are your children. Your babies can be individual or corporate. Any idea, initiative, program, or system that you build is your brainchild and is expected to outlive you. So if it's a company, a corporation, an organization, an initiative, a ministry, whatever it is that you birth, that's your children too. So generational vision says, look, I actually want these children to maximize their potential too. My biological, spiritual, mentees, projects, anything that has come out of me, it needs to succeed me. It needs to get bigger than I could have taken it by myself until it is global, until it impacts future generations. And I'm thinking about Jesus, who literally thought like this. And Jesus was, yep, he's the Son of God. Yes, he's Emmanuel. Yes, he's all the things that we call him. But he was one man with a global and generational vision. He said, I'm going to build something. He said, I'm going to build it upon this rock. I'm going to build my church. And he said, the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And in his mind, he was going to empower the next generation, which was the apostles. They would empower the next generation, the post-apostolic era. They would empower what's next. Until today, there are billions of people on the planet claiming Jesus to be their Lord and their Savior. 2,000 years later, that's the power of a generational vision and generational goals. Today, Jesus is still the most famous person in the world. Today, his name still has power in the earth. So I want to talk about 200 years. And let's keep the mics muted. I never really heard this anywhere. To be fair, I kind of discovered this in research, and if other people have it out there, great. I'm not about kind of owning ideas. I think they come from good ideas come from God, and every good and perfect gift comes from God. But this is just some things I begin to see in the scriptures. So I'm going to start on the far left with why 200 years. 200 years covers the lifespan of your great grandchildren. So each generation outlives the next by 30 to 50 years. Okay. So it really is the potential lifespan of 4 generations. The potential lifespan of 4 generations. And so my challenge to people is yes, I do believe in 5-year plans and 10-year plans and retirement plans and all of that, and we've got a lot of, I guess, templates and systems around life mapping. But I think that if we are to tap into purpose and destiny, we have to go beyond that and become the good man that leaves an inheritance to his children's children. All right. So at least to be good, at least need enough generational vision to factor in your grandchildren. Okay. Enough generational vision to factor in your grandchildren. So the next point here says the 3rd generation is your grandchildren, while the 4th describes your great grandchildren. Your actions affect your bloodline to the 4th generation. I'm about to prove that biblically. Your actions, your decisions, your choices have a material effect on your bloodline to the 4th generation, biblically and practically, and I'm going to show you how. So first of all, we know that God visits the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the 3rd and the 4th generation. This means that iniquity contaminates or impacts your bloodline for 4 generations. In other words, we not only inherit the genes of our parents, we tend to also inherit their psychology, and we tend to inherit both good and bad character traits. But that process goes on to about 4 generations, if I'm to understand that iniquity to the 3rd and 4th. But I want you to go up to the little blue box that's next. I want to talk about Levi's genes. And of course, I'm not talking about blue genes, but I'm talking about Levi's genetics. Because according to Hebrews, Levi, which is who was effectively the father of the priesthood. Okay, so all the priests in Israel came out of Levi, the son of Jacob, right? That was his domain. And all the priests and the Levites were related genetically to Levi. So according to this, Levi, who received tithes, okay, paid tithes in Abraham. And the Bible says because he was yet in Abraham's loins when Abraham met Melchizedek. Now, that may all go right over some heads, but here's what it is. Genesis chapter 14, Abraham met the priest of God. His name was Melchizedek. And he was the king of a city called Salem, and he was the priest of God. And Abraham had just won a battle against an alliance of enemies, and he came back from that battle very rich. Now, Abraham was not a warmonger. It's just that those kings had captured Lot, his nephew, and he went to rescue Lot, his nephew. And in the battle against those kings, Abraham won the victory, even though he didn't have an army. He just had about 300 servants with him. But they won the victory against all the odds, and they came back with great spoil. So when Abraham met Melchizedek, who was the priest of God, who was definitely praying for Abraham and covering him, in a spiritual sense, Abraham gave him 10%, 1/10 of all the spoil. Now, according to the scriptures, Levi was in his loins when he gave tithes to Melchizedek, and therefore Levi paid tithes to Melchizedek while he was yet in Abraham's loins. That is the fourth generation. Levi was the fourth generation from Abraham. So Abraham's son is Isaac, his grandson is Jacob, and his great-grandson, one of his great-grandsons is Levi. So 4 generations from Abraham. So Abraham's actions brought a blessing to the 4th generation. And we're told in Exodus that your actions can bring a curse to the 4th generation. What is the 4th generation? That's your great grandchildren. And therefore, we're now looking at the difference between good and great. The Bible says that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. That a good person leaves an inheritance to the 3rd generation. But you will not be great until a 4th generation. Now, let's think about this just in practical terms. You are grandma, you are grandpa with a 3rd generation. Okay? Or, you are grandma, you are grandpa, but only when your children's children have children do we call you great. At that point, you're great grandfather, a great grandmother. So greatness is a generational value. Okay? It's when your children's children have children. Great grandparents have that 4th generation in sight from themselves being the first. So seed time and harvest. Your ultimate harvest is 200 years from now. You are the seed of a generational harvest. A generational vision seeks to create leverage for your great grandchildren. Generational goals are the targets that your great grandchildren will achieve. This principle holds true for spiritual, professional, and project children. Where will the business be in 200 years? Come on now, the project child, the brainchild, initiative, the ministry, the business, the enterprise, where will it be in 200 years? How will your voice be louder in 200 years from now? So people who think like this are thinking in terms of greatness. They are great in their thinking. You're not great in your thinking if all you're thinking is, how can I make $100 million? All right? And buy the yacht and the jet. And all, that may be great in human terms, but you're actually biblically thinking great thoughts when you're thinking, we're going to birth a business, an enterprise, a ministry, an operation, an initiative, a charity, a foundation, a cause. We're going to birth something. All right. Now, where will it be in 200 years? Okay. After my children run with it, the grandchildren run with it, and the great-grandchildren run with it. Where's it going to be then? Those are great thoughts. Okay. And people without faith don't think this way, but people of faith are called to think this way, because this is the way God thinks. Whatever God's doing with you, he's doing it because of the impact that you're going to have on future generations. And so we're thinking God thoughts and great thoughts when we're thinking like this. So let's go over to the next one, which is hard instruments and vehicles. Hard instruments and vehicles. I want you to listen to this carefully. This is not going to be a legal lesson, but this is an important lesson. Number one, your will is the primary instrument for generational success and succession. Your will. Everyone should have a will. Everyone should revise your will. Everyone should make sure that your will is in a safe place, so that, because you see, you're going to build something. You're going to achieve a lot of prosperity in your life. And what you don't want is God to call you home and there's a big fight amongst your children, with the government, with agencies over what is left. No. You need a will. Number two is your trust fund is a vehicle that protects your assets from the government, taxes, and probate delays. So again, you want to look into that. You want to have a trust in place. Number 3 is a foundation, okay, which is basically a charity that can carry your IP, your intellectual property, and projects forward to the 3rd and 4th generation. In other words, there is that nonprofit foundation that can continue to carry your message. All right. And that can be funded by your enterprises, and that can begin to employ people in different countries to carry on with your work. Number 4 is a company that is a for-profits company or corporation. A company or a group of companies can and should outlive you and form part of the inheritance for those descendants who are able to manage it. And then finally, your IP, really like a book. A book is a vehicle for transferring values. So what you need is some hard instruments and vehicles in place when you're dreaming about the next 200 years. You're dreaming about the next 200. Now, this is not something you're going to do next week, but it's something that you need to commit to do and say, look, I'm going to look at the 200 years, and I need a will in place. I need a trust fund. I need a foundation. I need a company. I need a book. And if you need a book, if you want to write a book and write your story, your own book of Proverbs, by the way, I say everyone should have their own book of Proverbs. What's your book of Proverbs? It's a hard instrument. It's a vehicle for the generational transfer of values and wisdom. Okay. Solomon writes Proverbs, and he says, to my son. Okay. What is he saying? He's saying, look, everything I've learned, I much of it I learned the hard way. I don't want you to have to learn the hard way. I'm going to show you what I've learned about all different aspects of life. So whether that's a book, whether that's some other artistic project, some other work of art that's going to outlive you, that in some way embodies your message, your values and your vision, if you want to put that in place, okay? Soft instruments. Okay, soft instruments and vehicles for generational succession and for having a louder voice in 200 years than you have now is like portraits and sculptings are a soft reminder of the origins of a family business, an enterprise, or a vision. You ever go into a rich person's house, you're going to see a picture of their great-grandfather right over the fireplace, a proper portrait. You're going to see a bust, little statue of the head of grandfather and grandmother sitting, in the hallway. You go into a rich person's house that became rich, that inherited platforms. This is not necessarily the protocol of the new rich, all right? Because all of us are going to be the new rich. In other words, we start from scratch. But we have to realize that just because we started from scratch, that makes us the fathers of a new tribe and of a new bloodline. And therefore, it's future generations that need to walk into a house and see a portrait of the man or the woman that started the enterprise. These are soft vehicles. And then photos and video libraries and to collect and collate memorable moments so that future generations can view and review your life and lessons. Now, listen, you can't even think this way unless you are convicted of the fact that God's going to take you to some amazing places in your lifetime, that you're going to do some amazing things. You're going to build some amazing things. You're going to become phenomenally wealthy, phenomenally influential, and phenomenally significant. You're going to be a game changer. Well, all the stuff you put in your Dominion statement, if you believe it, then you want to start to put over the next 3 to 5 years these soft and hard instruments in place. The photo library. Write your own book of Proverbs, your personal wisdom and philosophy, the lessons you've learned. Write prophetic letters to your great-grandchildren. What? I said, write prophetic letters to your great grandchildren. Write letters to the company that will exist in your name 200 years from now. Begin to speak to them, because all this is going to do, and it sounds crazy to some people, but what it's going to do is going to expand your vision. And it's going to make you a giant. You're going to be walking the street like a giant. You're going to literally feel like a giant. I cannot tell you how I actually feel. But it happened with this breakthrough, this understanding that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but greatness is to the third and the fourth generation. Beautiful. Now I'm just going to read this piece here. A revelation of your destiny doesn't start or end with your lifespan. It starts with your historic inheritance and ends with a generational blessing. Woo! If you really want a revelation of your destiny, don't start with when you were born and how long you live and how well you live. Start with the bloodline you've come through, or the circumstances you have come through. It doesn't have to just be the bloodline as in biology, but you want to look at your history, maybe the history of your people, the history of your culture, the history of. You can start and then realize that, okay, I've inherited this. Some of the things you inherited were advantages and some were disadvantages. But what you're going to do is you're going to change the destiny of your bloodline forever with the work you do in your lifetime. And you're going to do a work in your lifetime that changes the trajectory of your bloodline and of your project line. Because God said, Abraham, I will bless you. Okay. He didn't just say, I will bless you and you'll be a blessing. No. He said, I will bless you, then I'll make your name great. And when your name is great, you can be a blessing. And a great name has generational properties. That's what makes your name great. There's a good book by Jim Collins called From Good to Great, great business classic, From Good to Great, in which he looks at the difference between good companies and great companies. And fundamentally, great companies have succession, they have sustainability, they have continuity, they have plans, they are able to go global because of the thinking of the entrepreneur. Greatness. You are born to solve a problem, to answer a question, to complete a sentence. You may not be able to do it all in your lifetime, but you can get it done through 4 generations. Your purpose in life is to convert your inheritance into a legacy. It is not always clear from your past. You may receive more clarity looking into your future. This was true of Abraham, who saw nothing in his past, but greatness in his future.
Hey, I'm Bishop Wayne Malcolm, author, coach, and founder of the Epic Kingdom Network. If you've ever felt like something's missing in what you've been taught about Christianity, you're not wrong. Most of us were taught that heaven and the hereafter are the goal, prize, and sole objective of the faith. But the original message of Christ taught us to engage, to influence, and to transform the world. Believe it or not, Jesus didn't die to get us into heaven. He died to get heaven into us, and then through us into the earth. What if I told you that Christianity was never meant to be a religion, but rather a relationship and a global revolution, a divine intervention, not a man-made institution? The original message and mission of Christ was hijacked, diluted, distorted, and replaced with a religion. My new ebook, Kingdom Theology for Kingdom Citizens, is not just another devotional, it's a call to action. A bold reintroduction to the original message of Christ, a message of dominion, not escapism, of transformation, not tradition. You'll learn what it means to rule and reign with Christ, to steward wealth with purpose, to influence government, education, culture, and business as an ambassador of heaven. This book will shift your lens, stir your spirit, and set you on course with divine clarity. And right now, for a limited time, I'm giving you free access to the digital and audiobook versions, no cost, no catch. Just click the link in the description, grab your copy, and step into clarity.
Hey there, entrepreneurs! If you enjoy the teachings of Bishop Wayne Malcolm, I've got something amazing for you. Introducing the New Breed Community, an exclusive online platform for kingdom-conscious entrepreneurs, professionals, investors, and creators. This isn't just a community, it's a movement where we discuss and explore kingdom concepts. Here, kingdom-minded people connect, share, learn, and grow together. Inside, you'll find exclusive content from Bishop Wayne Malcolm, including special sessions just for members. And the best part? It's free to join. The New Breed Community sits on the Heartbeat platform, where Bishop Wayne Malcolm is excited to meet you online. Join us for weekly Q&A sessions with Bishop Wayne and get exclusive insights that can transform your life. Love to read? Join our book club to feed your mind and spirit. Got a prayer request? Post it and let's lift each other up. Have a testimony? Share how God's goodness is shining in your life. We're more than just a community, we're a movement. Discover the powerful relationship between your profession and your purpose. Join us now on the Heartbeat platform. Connect with us and let's grow together. Bishop Wayne Malcolm and the New Breed Community are waiting for you. So what are you waiting for? Hit that join button and step into a world of connection and growth. A warm welcome awaits you. See you on the inside.